For this assignment, we need to make a new file, and we want to make sure that it's in inches, and we want our width to be 5 and our height to be 10.5. Make sure that your resolution is 300 and click create. So it should look like this, so a nice long skinny rectangle. Once we have our canvas, we need to put in our main image. That's going to take up a little over half of our picture. So we're going to go to main image. Hopefully you've downloaded it by now and not even opened it. And we are going to select all by pushing Windows A, so we've got that little dancing line around it. And then we are going to copy. So for me, that's Command C. For you guys, that is Windows C. So then we're going to pop over and we are going to paste it. Now this is way too big, so we need to transform this one. So Windows T, and then I like to make sure that it's locked up here. And I am going to drag it smaller. That is probably too small. And I'm going to go a little bit bigger. Now, about halfway, I'm going to get like the little, I want it to be centered. And then I think I'm going to go right about, about halfway, right there. Because I want a little bit of like wiggle room for my brown gradient there. And I don't want to cut off like my headstones and whatnot. So I think right about there is good. So I'm going to check mark it. And I think that that is good now. So my next step is to add that gradient effect. The first thing we need to do for the gradient effect though is to add a new layer, because we don't actually want to mess with this layer here, okay? So to get our color, I am just going to use the little eyedropper tool, and I am going to kind of scroll around. I want a brown, and I want a brown that is from this picture. So, I mean, you can do gray. Try to pick one of the predominant colors in yours. I mean, technically, like I could do gray, but that really doesn't fit like kind of like the tone that I'm going for. I'm kind of going with like that creepy haunted effect. There's not a whole lot of green in mine, and the green that is there is not quite right. So I'm just going to find my brown, and that is now my color. And I need to use the gradient tool for this next step. If you have the paint bucket tool, click and hold on it, and the gradient tool is right above it. Now, you might have other things already set, but we are going to click on this box up here, and we want to start with an ombre effect, okay? And we want it to go from our color, from our foreground color, not to our background color, but from our foreground color to transparent. So we're going to click on that. And then we are going to move our colors around a bit. I want a little bit more of my foreground to show, and I think I want that transparent to kind of, I want a more gradual transition. So you can kind of play with it until you get one that you like, and if you want, you can always come back to this. I'm going to click OK. Now, what's going to happen is where I start my click is where the brown will be, and where I let go of my click is like the end of, like that's where the transparency will be. So I do not want to start way down here and go up here, because then that is what's going to happen. So I'm going to undo that. I want to start at the bottom of my picture and only go up about halfway like this. Okay, so I can kind of see, that might be a little bit too much, so I'm going to undo that. Maybe come down a little bit lower. Okay. But I can kind of see I'm not really happy with that gradient effect. So I think I need to go back in here, and I need to play with this a little bit more. Kind of make it a little bit smoother of a transition. Oop. I have all of these. I don't need all of these because they're all just transparent ones. So I kind of want that transition to be a little bit more like this. So I'm going to bring that line up there. I'm going to go like that. I'm going to click OK. Now I'm going to try it again. So I'm going to go from here up to here. Nope. About halfway. That's a little bit better. Remember, you're not going to be using like this lower half here. You are mainly looking for a space that you can put your text in your font. So if I am looking at this, about halfway is right about here. I think I need to go a little bit higher, but I am losing a lot of my picture there. So what I think I need to do is I actually need to move this layer up a bit, like that, so that I have more space for the gradient, and writing, but it's not going to take away a lot of my picture. So now I have more space for writing down here. And if you do another gradient on top, it's going to just overlay it, and that's fine. But eventually you're going to find that you are going to have issues with too many gradients on there. So I like to just kind of undo and bring it on back. So I think I am good with that, and I am going to call my gradient done. Remember, you can always move it around. That is why we do it on its own layer. So now I need to figure out roughly where my font and my text is going to go. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm actually going to kind of portion off my part for my lower half. That way I'm not going way down too far from my text. So that is, once again, another layer. And we actually need our paint bucket tool. Okay, so we are going to select that lower portion, and I'm going to go right about here because it's not quite half. It's a little lower than half, and I can always move it down if I need to. And I am going to fill it, but I need a color. So looking at my proposal for because I'm doing Hulu, that color should be like kind of like a super, like it's like a bluish gray, like a dark bluish gray. So I'm going to kind of go over here, and I can go in and change this later if I need to. But right now I am just using it to kind of parcel that part off. So I think that I could go a little bit darker with that. And yours does not need to like perfectly match mine, obviously. So like you don't have to sit there and copy the hex code. But so I now kind of have it portioned off. And remember, underneath that, I still have to have a spot for my icons and all that. And looking at that, I think I'm actually going to move that up a little bit, and I am going to move this up a little bit. Because now what I need to do is I actually need to put another gradient, I know, yet another gradient from the top down. So I am going to go and I'm going to make a new layer, and this gradient is actually going to start with black. So I'm going to go back to my gradients, make sure that it's still the foreground color to transparent, and this one's just going to be a little baby gradient. It's just kind of the top that needs it, because like that's where like your battery and all that kind of stuff is. I think I'm going to go a little bit longer. Oh, I didn't go straight, so it kind of started to go crooked. So I'm going to start again. I'm going to try again. I can zoom in too if I need to, which I might need to do. So I'm going to zoom in so it's a little easier for me. And I'm going to go boop, just a little. There we go. So now I have that nice gradient up there. And right now it's looking a little kind of weird. It doesn't look right, but that's because it's missing a lot of its stuff. And I might even want to go back and mess with this gradient some more. You can always do that. So I'm going to have to pick up that color. I don't know why I clicked on that. Pop on over here. And if I need to, I can make a new layer, or I can play with it on this one. I think I'm going to bring that gradient up a tiny bit higher. Ooh, not that high. A little bit more like that, just so it's kind of that smoother. And I can even mess with the opacity a little bit. But see, then I have this problem right here. So what I can do is go down to my background, and I can paint bucket tool in my background that color. Okay? So you can always play with your opacity or your blending options too. That is not a problem, but I want to make sure that I don't have like that solid line there. So I now have my top gradient, my middle gradient, and then that bottom color. My next thing is fonts. So I don't really want to mess with these too much anymore. I don't want to accidentally grab them on accident when I do my text. So I'm actually going to make a group, and I am going to call this background, because then I am just going to kind of drag all that into there. So it's still in my picture. And I can just straight up, I can't drag the background because it's locked. I don't need to drag the background. And I am going to lock it. So like I can't grab it and move it now, okay? And that just makes it so like when you're trying to grab the teeny tiny little fonts that we're gonna be using soon, you won't have this issue. So my next one is I need to put in type. And I am gonna do a horizontal type tool, and I'm gonna make sure that my font is white for this one. And then I am just gonna kind of pop it here, and I am going to make sure all of it is selected, and I'm going to delete. And for this one, I'm gonna type in the Ghost's Grave, because we are once again doing it for that book. and I need to change my font. Now you are going to pick a font that best works for you. I am going to pick a font that works for this one. So it's our fan favorite here, the Tritello or whatever it's called. And then I need to make it bigger. I don't want it so big that it's like taking up the whole thing. And once again, I can adjust this as I need to, but I do want to make it big enough because it is like the most important part of, you know, this. It tells me the name of my piece. Once you have the title in, we are going to start adding that extra information. So that is once again another vertical or horizontal text box, not vertical. And for this one, we are going to try to match our original streaming services font as close as possible. And oop, it thinks I'm still there. So I actually need to make, oh, it's not going to let me make a new text box. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to lock that one for right now so that I cannot mess with it, and I need to make a new text box. Now, Hulu's font, if you Google, like the closest one that you can find is Futura. So when you do yours, you can Google like what's Netflix's font, and you might find it. But we are going to use Futura for this one. And so I need to put the length of it here. So I can do my pages, I can do chapters, I can do, if it's like part of a series, maybe it's like book 1 of season 1 or whatever, and then you put your pages. That is up to you. But the Ghost Grave is 224 pages, and they work in all caps again, but this is way too big. So I am going to pop this down in size to about there. That seems about good. And then I can move that, and that text box is actually way too big. It doesn't need to be that big. It is ridiculously big, I would say. And I can just kind of put that right there like that. And then I actually want to put in another text box. Lots of text boxes on these. So this is when like starting to group things again is going to come in handy. So I'm going to make another group, and that one is locked, so I have to unlock it just to move it. I'm going to put it in that group here, and I am going to say that this is the top, like that's where all my top stuff is, like the top text and logos and all that stuff. I'm going to do that. I'm going to go back, and I am going to lock these just for right now so that when I do the rest of my font and text, I won't accidentally click on them. The next section I'm going to add is, that's going to be the rating. Yes, I can't type there because that type is locked. Go figure. I am going to put another text box. And so this is things like rating. This is things where it's like the genre and when it came out. So you're going to put, you know, when your book was published, and then whatever your like if it's a teens book or whatever, don't say it's a children's book. If it's like a Stephen King book, like if it's don't say it's like TV youth or whatever. So for this one, I said TV 14, which is actually probably a little higher than it really needs to be. But then I am going to put thriller for this one, and I am typing way too large, so I'm once again going to make that smaller. That's probably too small. All right, and then, because I can always go in, remember, and fix this later. Right now, we're just kind of getting the pieces into place. And I am noticing that this is actually probably too condensed. So what I am going to do is I'm going to switch it up, and I'm going to try medium. And that looks a little bit more like the Hulu text. It's a little bit more spaced out. So I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to fix it on that one too. And that means that I need to fix the box because it does make it a little bit bigger, which is fine. But you just got to keep that in mind. And now that I'm moving this, I can move this. I kind of want them to be lined up properly and all that jazz. But I am noticing I am going to run out of space here for like the buttons and whatnot. So I'm going to unlock my Ghost Grave layer, and I am going to actually click that whole like folder because I need to, I'm going to click that whole space there, hold shift and click it all, and I need to move it up just a bit so that I will have some space for my buttons. So I'm going to go like that. And this is why we do everything on separate layers, okay? So I have the title, I have the length, I have this information here too, like the rating and all that stuff. There will be little dots that we need to add in, but the last little bit of text that I need to add in this general space is just like the little thing above it. So it could be like Academy Award winner, or it could be something like, I don't know, new season or something. Maybe it's like a new book. And so I am going to write 2008 Academy Award winner. But I just noticed I typed that all in standard text, and I need to be working in all caps. So I'm going to try again. Academy Award winner. Okay, and then I can move that right on up above, and you'll notice it is way too big. This font, this text is way too big. So I am going to go back, and this is where I'm going to adjust these things. That's a little bit better. And then I have to move it down. And I might need to adjust that some more later, but that tells me that maybe these fonts are too big too. But like I said, we can take a look at that and work with it as we go. Now that the text is in, the next step is the buttons. So for that we need our shape tool, which is right here. There's a lot of different shapes. We want the rectangle, and we want it to be filled, and then we want no stroke with this one. And then we want to start with some rounded corners. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to go with 20. Let's see what 20 looks like. And I am just going to put it in there, and I can already tell that those corners are far too rounded. So I can mess with it if I want, so I can like make it a different size, what have you. And there's a couple different ways that I can change the rounding of those corners, because if I click here, I do not like those. I think those are a little too rounded for the Hulu experience. And so if I zoom in, I can see these little circles right here, and I can pull them farther in or farther out, or I can just straight up type over here. So I think I'm going to type in 10 and see what that looks like. And I like that one better. So that is awesome. And now I am going to duplicate that one because I want it to be the same size. And I am just going to bloop, pop it over here. But we do not want this one to have a fill. This one should be see-through. So I'm going to go back to my shape tool. I'm going to give it a stroke. I am going to adjust my stroke as I need to when I get there. Make sure that it's a solid one. I'm going to stick with 5 because I think that actually looks pretty good. And we can change the size of these buttons as well. It's just right now we just need spots for buttons, because we need to add text to those buttons before we know what size they need to be. The next step is to add text to our box. So if you have the layer chosen, and you go over and click text and then click inside of it, it's going to make a text box the exact same size as that shape, which is awesome. So we want to make sure that it's center aligned, and this one is our details one. So for that, we might go a little bit bigger with our font for this one. So 14 is what the other ones are. 16 looks good. And I can now actually just kind of make it a little shorter so it's a little bit more centered vertically as well as horizontally. So if I click off of it, it looks like it needs to be moved up just a little bit. So I'm going to move it up. Oop. Move it up just a little bit. Bada bing, bada boom. It says details. Now that tells me that the box that it's in is too big. So I need to change the size of that box. So I'm going to make it a little bit more narrow. And then I am going to click on my details. And I am going to make that one a little bit more narrow. Nope, nope, nope. So there, now it looks a little bit more the right size for that font. And I can always make it a little bit shorter if need be, but for right now it looks good. So then I have to do the same in my play one. So I'm going to make sure I have the right rectangle clicked. I am going to type, and unfortunately it's white on white, so I need to change my color, and that is where I will type play. Now this one, we have to put like a little triangle next to it. So the box, we're going to keep it center aligned for right now, but then when we start going around and messing with things, we are going to probably have to change that. So I need to do a triangle tool this time, and I need my triangle to be black, so I'm going to click on this so I can get my black back. And I'm just going to make a little triangle to start with, and I need to move it, and I need to rotate it. Oop, cancel. So this triangle is probably going to get pretty small. Oop, want that to go away. So I am going to zoom in here so I can see a little bit better. Now I can rotate it like that. I can also go up here and just straight up type 90 degrees. And then I want to make sure that when I am changing the shape that I don't make it like oddly proportioned. And then I'm just gonna go back to this for move. And those pink lines will tell me that it's all centered. So looking at my original here, looks like he needs to be a wee bit smaller. It's a very small play button, or triangle on the play button, I suppose. And then we can go back to centering it. Boop, there we go. So I'm actually gonna select both that one and the play layer, and I am going to lock them together. Because now if I move one, I move the other, okay? So the next step is to go to my rectangle, change the size, alrighty, go back to my play layer, and I can just move them all at once, and I can just kind of go like that, and then I am going to add that rectangle to this link here. Oop. And now that button is all stuck together, okay? So I can just move it around on its own, which is awesome. I'm gonna do the same with my details one. I'm gonna lock those together, and then I'm just gonna kind of scoot this over so it's a little bit closer. And my two buttons are done. I might go back in, this is looking a little kitty wampus here. I might need to mess with this a little bit. But right now, our goal is to get everything in, and then we're gonna go in and make it as fancy as possible. So to add those three little circles here, what we are going to do is we are going to go in and we are going to make the ellipse tool. We are going to make sure that it is white. And then these guys, so we can make ovals and stuff, but we don't want that. So we are going to hold shift while we're making these little baby circles here. And they are actually going to be really, really small. So I might even need to zoom in a little bit more just so that I'm not messing with the wrong things. So once I have that, I am going to duplicate that layer. And I'm going to move it over. Okay, and then I'm going to duplicate that layer again. And I'm going to move it over. Now, before I do anything else, I want to zoom out and look at it so I can see all of it to see if those are the right size. And looking at that, those are way too big. So I've got to zoom back in, and I am going to click all of them, and then I am going to change their size. So once again, I'm going to hold shift so that it's done uniformly, and then I'm going to let go. So they're a lot smaller now, so let's take another look. Click off of them. Okay, I think that's better in terms of size. I think they need to be spaced out a little bit more, but in terms of size, I think that's pretty good. So I'm going to zoom back in. And I'm just going to kind of move these ones over, and then like that. And then I'm going to zoom out again, just kind of see how that looks. Oh, I zoomed out and then I went way too down. Okay, I think that that's pretty good. They could probably be a little bit smaller, but we're going to take a look at that. That's another one of those. We will take a look at the end sort of situations. We've got it pretty close now. And I could lock all these together, but I actually want them all to be on the same thing at this point. If I want to go in and like change up the spacing and whatnot, I could just lock them for now. But I actually kind of like how this is going. So I am actually going to, you could link the layers, but I am actually going to merge the shapes so they're all just on one. Okay, so then that way it's not like, because I'm getting quite a few layers over here, so I'm just going to deal with it that way. And so these are now all on the same layer, and if I want to go in and mess with them individually, I would have to like go in and do that. But for right now, I am perfectly happy with them. I'm just going to center them with the rest of the centering over here. And then I'm going to call those ones good for now. The next little circles that I'm going to do are up in here. So I am going to do one little circle here. And then before I do anything else, I am going to zoom out and see what that looks like in terms of size. And that one could be a little bit smaller. So I'm going to click on it like this. And you can actually mess with it right here as well. So I am going to make it 27 right now. Let's see what 20 looks like. I think that that's good. So I'm going to zoom right on back in there. Lots of zooming in and out on this one. I am going to center align it on this. And then I am going to make a copy of it, and I'm going to paste that copy of it. And I am going to do my best. There we go. It looks like it needs to scoot over just a tiny little bit. That looks good. And I am once again going to merge these shapes. And I'm even going to drop down to where those particular things are. And I'm going to link those together so that when I start, like if I start moving things around, those things will move together because they're supposed to be together. So then I have, if we're looking at this, I have the bottom little section here done. The next step is going to be adding our little Hulu logo at the top. Now, when you do this for your project, you might find a logo that already has a transparent background. If it doesn't, I'm going to show you later in this video how to select just the background when it comes to images and whatnot, so like a color selection. But for ours, for the ones you've already downloaded, it should be a PNG and it should have a transparent background. So what we're going to do is we're going to select all of that, and then we're going to copy it, bring it on over to our other one, and we're going to paste it. And this is way too big once again. And I am going to just zoom in because before I needed to see all my circles here. I don't need to see that anymore, so I'm actually going to zoom in 100%. And then I'm going to transform. So remember, that is Windows T or Command T in my case. And I want to make sure that my logo stays locked. I don't want to have my Hulu logo get really weirdly transformed, because then it's no longer Hulu. It's like oddness. So I'm transforming it and making it smaller, and I can actually type in the percentage up there if I want to, but I really just like to drag it. So I'm going to drag it there, and I'm going to put it, we're not putting it up in that black space, because typically that black space is where your power and all that stuff is. So according to my images, my reference photos, it kind of just goes up in the corner here. I'm going to line it up with my other text down here, and I think that is good. I can always move it later if I want to. The other thing that we need across the top are our little tab buttons here. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to make my first shape, and that is going to be a rectangle tool. And I am going to just kind of make my little rectangle tool. And according to my reference photo, I need to make the corners more rounded like this. And I know that it's going to be kind of smaller, so I'm going to make it a little bit smaller like that. And I've got my shape now. I might go in and change those corners again after I get my word in there to see what it looks like. But that is that button. So remember, with these ones, if I have the layer highlighted over here and then I click on it, it's going to give me, oh, I didn't quite do it right. Yes, I want to delete that layer. So I have this layer highlighted, and then I click right on that box with this. It's going to give me a text box that is the size of that box, which is what I want. Sorry that random thing just popped up in my video. And I want to change my color because this is the highlighted one. And so this one can't be white, obviously. And this is my all button. So I'm just going to type all. And then once again, I want it centered in the button vertically as well as horizontally, which means that I actually need to change and move around my text box a little bit. So I'm just going to move it down, and looking at the font size on this, I think that this font is a little bit too big for my text buttons here. So I am going to go back, I'm going to select it all again, and I'm going to change the text font size a little bit smaller. And there we go. So I have my all with the rectangle. And so looking at it, my rectangles are way too big. So I'm gonna go back with my shape tool and I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller so that it's a little better fit. Oop, that's too small. And now that I have that, I am going to lock the two together so that they are stuck. So like when I move one around, I'm moving around the whole button, not just that one, the button or the words. The next thing I need to do is add the rest of these little tabs. So I am going to make my text, my horizontal type tool here, and I'm going to go make it nice and big. And these ones need to be white, so I'm going to change the font color before I even start typing so I don't have to reselect it all. And so I need to put TV, and then, oh, not that much space. Some spaces, movies, some spaces, and then hubs. And now you could put these all on separate text boxes, and then you could space them accordingly. I am not going to with this one because I think we're going to get to the point where we have a lot of layers going on, and I don't want you guys to get a little too overwhelmed there. So I'm just going to have them spaced out like this, and I think that that looks pretty good. So I'm going to zoom out and see how that looks. Alrighty, I think that looks good. So I think that this top part is done for now. I am just going to close up that group, and then I'm just going to kind of lock it so that I don't mess with it on accident when I'm messing with the lower part. To move on to the lower part, we are going to need to start with our covers. And we also want to add in that box at the bottom, that black box, so that we know roughly how big everything needs to be. So I am going to make a new folder, and this one's going to just be called bottom because it's the bottom half. And my first thing I'm going to do is I can do a selection tool like we did with our color palette ones. I am just going to do a shape just because we want to practice our shapes this go around. And I am just going to make a black shape. It is a lovely little black rectangle there, and that is where my icons are going to go, and I will mess with that later, but that just kind of tells me roughly how big my book covers need to be. So the first one that we're going to have is the cover for our main book. So cover main book. So we are going to select all of this. We are going to copy, and we're going to pop back over here, and we're going to paste. Now it's going to be too big again, so we are going to Windows T for transforming, and we are going to make it smaller. Now, this first one is what's going to dictate how big everything else is and how much of that last one we're going to see. So I'm going to make it, because I need space for my text up here, I'm going to make it about this big. And then I am going to get my next one. And so cover one, select all, copy, pop back over, paste, transform, Windows T, and I want to make it the same height as this book here. So this can get a little tricky if you want to do it that way. Another way to do it is by looking at it, and it says right here like how many pixels it is. I'm going to right click that and change that to inches, just because for some of us that's a little easier to understand. And then over here, inches, that's a little easier to understand. Okay, but I just want to make sure that it's roughly the same height, and if you want to zoom in a lot, you can too. We are getting to that point where I need to get a little bit closer. So looking, this is too small. So I'm going to transform it again. And eventually those lovely little pink lines will pop back up, hopefully, so that I know. There we go, it is in. And then the third book, depending on how big you made these, you will see more or less of that third book. So when you do like the Hulu one or whatever streaming service you choose to do, you'll have like your 5 or 6 book covers, and then that last one always gets a little cut off. So I'm going to move these over just a skosh so that I have a little bit more wiggle room for that last one. Go for my second cover, select all, copy, paste, transform. It's a little big because I'm zoomed in so much. I'm going to kind of make that a little smaller there. And then So I'm going to make it to roughly the right size, and then I am going to kind of space it out the same and click enter. So I am not seeing a lot of this cover, and that is fine. We are not going to do too much to it because we can always bring it back in if we need to. Okay, so we're not going to like cut it to there, but we are just going to have it kind of go off the edge, because remember, if it's outside of the canvas, it's not going into the actual picture. And I just noticed that these two covers did not go into my bottom folder, so I'm just going to pop them in there real quick. And so I have 1, 2, 3 covers in here. Above our book covers, we need to put the category that these are in. So maybe it's like these are things you might like or whatever that your streaming service has. For this one, it is going to be our Academy Award winners and nominees. So once again, we need our horizontal type tool. We're just going to kind of pop one right in there. And this one, we want to left align it, no longer centering it. So 2008 Academy Award winners and nominees. Okay, and then I can move it to where it needs to be. I can change the font size if I need to, and all that stuff. So it's looking like I might have more space in my, towards the bottom. That'll be nice for my shape there. So I'm going to select all of these and move them up just a little bit. And then I am going to make that bottom bar a little bit bigger so I have a little bit more space for my icons. And then the other text that I need to put is over here. I need to put a view all. So this is just going to pop down here, and it's just going to say view all, and it is way too small so we can't see it. This one will be right aligned. Now you'll notice for our Academy Award winners and nominees, those ones did not get capitalized, and that is all just dependent upon whatever streaming service you end up choosing. So I'm just going off the reference photo that I chose for this. These would not be capitalized, but this is. It's a super fun, like, you got to make sure that you're following that's why we're going to make you pick a reference photo for this, just so that you have something to constantly reference back to. All right, so I've got this section done, and then I have to move on to my icons down here. Our icons down here, hopefully you've already downloaded them. We are going to start with our home icon. That is the first one in my reference photo, so I'm going to pop on over there. However, my home icon needs to have a filling. So I'm going to make sure that I have white here, and I'm going to click. And if I zoom in, I will actually notice it's got kind of like this really weird white outline here. So let's go like 200%, where like you can kind of tell it doesn't quite fill. So you might need to go in and just kind of click some of those places. And then I'm going to select all, and I'm going to copy it, pop back over here, and I am going to paste. So I gotta let it think for a little bit. And I actually want this to go into its own folder, because this little icon space down here is gonna be its own beast. I am going to lock these ones so I don't accidentally mess them up. And then I am going to make a new folder group. And this one will be my icons, or my little buttons down here. And now I need to transform this. It's got to be a lot smaller. And here's the thing. Looking at the actual Hulu one, it is not the same like proportion type as this one. So I'm going to get it to roughly the right size. And then I actually do in fact need to unlock my transform, because according to my reference photo, it should be a little bit wider than it is tall. So I'm just going to do that, and then I'm going to save it, and I'm going to put it over roughly here. Once I get all my icons in, I'll show you how to evenly distribute them, but now I am going to put in all my icons, doing the exact same thing as before, except we have to change the colors of them, because the only one that should be bright white like this is the home, because that is where we are, air quotes, on our screen. The next icon on my list, we are going to skip that one for right now, because I'm going to show you how to make that with our shapes. instead, we are going to go to the live button here. So there's my live one. And now this is white. We do not want white. So what we are going to do is we are actually going to select a color range. And we want to select the white color range, which is already there, but like if I can select elsewhere too, but I want to select the white color range. And I am actually going to fill that with a gray because, like I said before, this is our tab that is not currently being used. So I'm going to go with this gray, and I'm going to fill it in, and then I am going to copy it, bring it on over, and I'm going to paste it, transform it, and I'm going to, just to make my life easier, I'm going to lock my height and width for right now. However, according to my reference, my height and width need to not be locked for that last little bit because it needs to be kind of like skinnier like this. And then what I am going to do is I'm going to just kind of put it right here next to my house for right now so that I can get it to roughly the size that it needs to be. Now, it also kind of needs to be a little turned like that. Rotation, there we go, and it is good to go. For this last icon, I could not find a good version that would match the Hulu one. So I am going to have to make this one. So I need to start with my little square here. And this one needs to be more of a square. So I need to change my corner rounding here. So it's much less rounded. And it needs to have a stroke and no fill. So that is the first part of that little icon there. I need to make sure that it's the right shape and the right size though. So I am going to click on it, and I need it to be a little less rectangular like that. However, it is roughly the right size. There we go. And the next step is the check mark inside. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do that one with lines, with the line tool. And I'm going to make one little check mark part down. And then do not click here like to go back up because it's going to think that you're trying to do that. It's going to think that you're trying to grab the last one. And then I'm going to go there for that one. So I am actually now going to zoom in quite a bit. Not on the little girl. Ooh, too far. And what I need to do is I need to mess with these little ends so that they actually kind of like touch each other. Okay? And so this can be an issue in terms of like, you can just move the points so that they match, or you can like rotate. So I think I might need to rotate this one a little bit so that the edges match a little bit better, like that. And you can actually just straight up move that end point. Oh, nope, I just drew another line. I didn't want to do that. I am just going to then move this so that it lines up like that. And if I am looking at the Hulu one, their ends are a little bit more rounded. So I am going to mess with my end points over here and the corners a little bit like that. And then I'm going to do that with my other one too, just to kind of give it a little bit of a rounder feel, kind of like they have with all their other ones. Now, if you need to, you can make your line thickness thicker for this one. You might need to, you might not need to. But the first thing I am going to do is I'm going to select all of those that are in the same icon, and I am actually once again going to merge those shapes. So that icon is all, oh, no, I'm not. I am going to merge the shape for the lines like this. And then I am going to link the line and the rectangle, because if I try to do it all merged, like you guys saw, my line just went missing. So I'm just going to link those two layers so now I can move them all at the same time. So there we go. I have all my icons, and now I'm going to zoom out a bit because I don't need to be this close for this next part. I am going to space them evenly. So to do that, I need to put this one roughly where it needs to be in terms of the final product, and I am going to put this one roughly where it needs to be in terms of the final product. And so you can kind of see, like, I'll get my little pink lines are telling me where everything is, and I think I'll go like there, like that. And then I am going to select all of them except for, I'm actually going to disconnect these ones because it's going to try to think that the line is its own thing. We will just move the line later. So I'm going to select my rectangle and all my icons. And then up here at the top is where you can find your arrangements. So I am going to make sure that all of their centers match. And then this button right here will evenly distribute them horizontally. So I'm going to click that, and then it's going to make it so that they're all nicely evenly distributed. And then I'm going to go back to my check mark and just kind of move it to where I need it to go. And then I'll just relink them. And now they are evenly distributed on the bottom of my screen, so that all I have left to do is put in the words. For the text underneath, because we're going to need one with white text and the rest with gray, we do not want to put them in the same text box. Also, we kind of want to make sure that they are lined up with the icons, and then we can just link them with the icons so that they move around at the same time. So I am going to put one text box right there, and this font is going to have to be quite a bit smaller just because that is the way that it works here. And so this is my home, and I need to make sure that is the right color. So this one is white, and then the rest will be gray. So I think that 10 is still a little bit too big. I'll bump it down to 8, and so that works a little bit better, and then I can just kind of wiggle room it so that it's right underneath. And then I am just going to fast forward through the rest because we've done plenty of text in this, so you should know what you're doing. But just make sure when we do the rest of them that we make our text gray. So I'll just do it real quick, fast forward through it so you don't have to sit there and watch me, and then we will talk some more. Now that my icons are in, I am going to zoom out, and I am going to take a full look at what is here compared to my original. And I am already noticing something. I forgot to do the little avatar up top that tells me whose account this is. So I am going to go and add that. And that is on the top. So I'm going to close off my icons. I'm going to lock them. And then I need to go back to my top portion, and I need to unlock it. And so now I am going to make a shape. And so looking at my original, it looks like it's got a gray with a white outline. So I think I will just quickly make this a white here. And then I go to my shapes. And right now it's in line. I do not want line. I want circle or ellipse tool. We're using our fancy words here, ellipse. All right. And then I am going to I'm going to make my circle down here first just to make my life easier. And remember, you hold shift and you get a nice spacious circle. And then I am going to move it up to here, and I can already tell it's too small, but I want to see and make sure, yep, okay. I wasn't sure that my line thickness was right. And now I am going to change the size. So I think I'm going to try see what 150 looks like. No, I think that's still a little bit too big. Actually, I don't think it's too big. I think I need to move these down. So this is that whole, like, we have to kind of like finesse things now. So I am going to move my tabs here down, which is going to be easy if I actually linked them to all the thingies together, which it does in fact look like I did. Yay. Okay, so, I accidentally clicked on the wrong thing. Okay, so I'm going to lock those, and then I'm just going to kind of scoot them on down. And then I'm going to go back up to this circle, and I'm going to look, and I think that that is good. And now I need to add my little, for Hulu, it's just 2 letters. Some of them, they have a little picture, so if you want to put a little picture in yours, on your final one, you can. But, I want to put my text there, and right now I just dropped in a random text box. I don't want that because I was not on the proper layer to get it the shape and size of that circle. So I'm going to click on my ellipse, and then I'm going to click with the text. So it's giving me a text box that's that exact same size. So I'm going to make it CO. You can do it for your, actually I would like for you to do it for your initials. So mine are CO for Covart. You can do your last name or your first name. And then I need to make the font white. And then I need to figure out what I am going to do in terms of size. So I need to make my size a little bit bigger here, I believe, and see what happens. And then I have to move it up. So there we go. It's nice and centered. And now is the time to kind of make all those little shifts and transitions. So I think I'm looking down here, I think I need to move. I need to make, I think, this in a new spot. So I'm going to click here. And that is linked with the ellipses, thank goodness. So I can just kind of scoot that up. And now is when you're done with everything, that's when you go in and you say, okay, I need to fix this. I have to add this. I think this font is too big. I want you to do that for your project as well as what you're doing. That was the bell. I want you to do that for your project as well as what you're doing here. But once you are done with this, we have one more bonus step that we are going to do. Before we do the bonus step though, we're going to want to save. And so I want you to save this with, remember we're going on our computer, and I am going to save it. I am going to save it as Hulu screen. And I want you to put your name on yours, and then I'm going to just click save because that's my Photoshop copy. But then I also want to export it as a JPEG. And it's gonna take a little bit here because my computer's brain is thinking of a lot of things right now. It's trying really, really hard. All right, now that I have it selected as a JPEG, I need to make it high quality. And then after I get the little spinning circle of doom, I click export. Now, I want you to upload this version to Schoology, but you are also going to upload this little bonus step that we're going to do, because this is a skill that I just want you to practice. We are going to close that out. Yes, save, even though I just saved. It never hurts to save too many times. And then we are going to put that screen onto our cell phone screen here. So I am going to open that one back up, the JPEG version, obviously. So open. Open. Okay. So I need to put this screen on that cell phone. What we are going to do is we are going to make it so that this screen is on top of our other one. So right now it is the background and we do not want that. So we are going to double click on this and we're going to say okay because we want it to be its own little layer there. And then we are going to have to select to get rid of this screen. To get rid of the screen color selection wise, we are actually going to use that color range selection tool again. So click on this and you'll notice it's selecting all these other things out here. Before we had just white and then a transparent background, so we could keep our fuzziness up like this. We do not want that this time. So we are going to bring it down, but we do not want any of that background. So you're going to keep putzing with it until you get a good selection. And I am thinking, I'm going to try 60, see how that goes. Because I just like the nice round number. So there we go. I have my selection and I want to get rid of this. So I am just going to cut it. So you could do Command X or you click delete and that makes that go bye-bye. And then I am going to deselect. I'm going to pop over here. I'm going to select all of this. I'm going to copy it. And then I'm going to pop back over here and I'm going to paste it. Now, it is on top. We do not want it on top. We are going to drag the layer below, and then we are going to move it so that none of that transparent background is showing. Now, this is also where you're going to realize if you did things not quite right. Alrighty. So I am noticing with mine, my icons might be in the wrong spot, so I might have to go back and fix that. But You want it so that there should be no transparent showing, okay? And like you're not going to stretch it to fit. So what I probably could have done what I could probably do to go back for my icons is I could kind of scooch them in. This is kind of why we're doing this too, because you need to know like how it fits. This is one of those user interface things that graphic designers work with, and how it works with the actual product. You need to know where it's actually going to fit, okay? So once you have this looking good and how you like it, you're just going to save it, and then that you're also going to upload as a JPEG to Schoology. So I want the actual screen, so I want this part all by itself, and then I want what the screen looks like in a cell phone. Once that's done, you are officially done with your screening service example.